Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's okay. And 2 o'clock, so not too bad. I apologize it wasn't this morning. My kids woke up ridiculously early from school. 12:15 on the 12th of December seems a bit too aggressive for parents, but we are where we are. Thankfully, I've sent them off to go out for something to eat so we can have a bit of a chat. But it does mean I actually haven't had a chance to look at the charts myself today. So we're going to kind of just have a bit of an overview and a first glance together and see where we go. How are we all doing? Right, let's just jump in. We can see Bitcoin, we can see the other charts here, but Bitcoin is the one we're mainly interested in. Let me just move things out of the way so I can actually see the chat and everything else. The big picture, so yesterday we just closed ever so slightly below that 93,000. And it's funny because a couple of days ago, I really thought we were going to bust above it and stay above it. But we're still in the game. Hey there, Jordan. We're still in the game. We're still sort of in and around that range. And you can even see from this very simple representation that actually all the drops down to, even sub 90K, they're being bought back up. Okay. We haven't lost our higher low, higher high formation from the bottom that was formed way back in the middle of November. So we're progressing on. With that, we do need to climb above this. I mean, that 93,000, it's just holding us back a little bit here. But as I mentioned, if we're not having a V reversal, I'm quite happy with a slow and steady. And when we look on some other charts, actually, we may be starting to just build through some previous places of resistance, which may be sort of giving us that next step on to it. But we'll go down in Bitcoin a little bit later on. Dominance, still don't really think, we kind of failed to collapse and fall down through November. Now we're just moving sideways. Probably kind of reflective of the market. Just everything's climbing, everything's falling pretty much in unison at the moment. But let's not kid ourselves. It's still 60% dominance for Bitcoin. So we're well off a genuine alt season at the moment. Bitcoin being the main dominant factor in the markets. Total 2, so everything but Bitcoin. I mean, we're battling that 125 line, which again, on Tuesday we were well above it. We were happy. We can say we've knocked down it. We kind of closed on it. Current candle, we can't really count. But you could argue that there's something there, and we've sort of had this resistance falling down. I'm going to draw a similar line when we get onto Bitcoin a bit later on. And you can say, well, actually, we have broken at least through this. We're moving sideways. There's some potential there that alts have found some sort of local bottom, and we're just working our way off that. And then actually, the other thing you could argue is a potential sort of double bottom there as well. Ones that I like in terms of the right-hand side, and even if we went down onto the daily, that's a 12-hour, sorry, you could still argue that this bottom here is technically higher than the one in November. So we're kind of building off that one. No major breakout from that one. Ethereum has actually done quite well recently, which I think has helped to lift the total 2 out of the depths that it was in. But really, now that we have found ourselves head above that 1.25 level, $1 trillion that is, we need to be building on it, obviously. There's some similarities with this chart and Bitcoin charts. I won't go into it too much because pretty much what I'm going to say with Bitcoin is going to be kind of reflective of total 2 as well. And then we've got BitTensor on the side. We had that fall down again, that sort of 250 bottom that we found end of November, beginning of December, kind of really is looking like a local bottom at the moment. My only concern right now is that we have broken above this yellow descending line, that $300 level where it currently sits. But to be honest with you, every time we've broken above it, we've kind of been knocked back down, and we'll have a look at EMAs. They're timing beautifully with some of the EMAs. This is why we're coming back down. So as we're in and around this $300 level, I'm not getting too excited right now. Part of me is saying, look, whenever we've hit this base, whether it be here, I know it's in yellow. Let's just get rid of everything and then we'll start again. No, that's not. Yeah, it'll work. I'll manage it. That was the line we were previously working through. Oh no, it wasn't. Apologies there. Kind of this line. Something like that. It was what we're looking at. We'll just get rid of all the other lines, just make it a bit cleaner. But every time we've come down and hit this level, here, okay, we broke through it, but we climbed back. We have had nice, strong moves to the upside. And so, now that we have found a local bottom here, I think there's certainly an argument to be had that whether or not it's going to last, that the most logical move from looking back in history, and we're talking about 6 months worth of history, 7 months worth of history, it's a pretty decent amount of time. We should see some sustained move up. Now, may only be about 33%. Maybe we get up to sort of 400 before we start having that conversation about what happens at the upper echelons of that range. But I am starting to really think about sort of where I currently sit with sort of my bit tensor, still vast majority on the sideline. And I'll be honest, I need to have a bit of a chat with myself today as to why I'm really staying on the sideline, and maybe I need to have a bit of a wider picture. Hopefully today's conversation might actually help me to sort of materialize some of those thoughts. But that's kind of what I'm seeing from that point of view. In terms of Bitcoin, in these other charts. So this is 12-hour time frame at the moment. I'm going to take it onto a clean chart, but just so you can kind of see sort of some of the representatives, the white lines are obviously fib levels. And what we've kind of had is an almost retest of some of these, but you can kind of see even at the, I mean, actually this gets eaten up a little bit more now. We've almost fully eaten that area of high liquidity, liquidation zone, sorry. So we've been eaten into that, but we are kind of sort of continuing this journey up with higher highs and higher lows. And whilst we've got the 93 to consider, obviously once we clear this area of liquidations, I'd say sort of that 97 level is going to be quite key as well, which we know ties in with some EMAs and some other support levels. I'll take it onto a bit of a cleaner chart because it's not actually that easy to see. Let me just change the color of this one at least, make it a bit fatter. You know what? Let's get rid of those for now. The one thing I would say, I drew this again, we're on the 12-hour chart. This is what I drew on Tuesday. And back then, we were sort of, where were we? Here. We were kind of messing in and around it. And then we had the fun and games on Wednesday with the FOMC, which was pretty much a non-event. Everyone knew we were getting the 25 basis points cuts. That happened. Looks like the market had already anticipated it. But we still had some movement in what Bitcoin was doing. But actually, when you look at it, yeah, okay, we fell back down the next couple of days. We found ourselves on Thursday, these 12-hour candles, remember, coming back down sort of sub 90,000. But look, right into this trend line. And then we've just managed to clear and build it off. If we, I can't know, let me just reload this one. Sorry, 2 seconds. If it wants to load, well, in wrong colors. Of course they are. Okay. But what, they're in purple now. No idea why, but that's the color they're in. But you can kind of see, whilst we have been falling down, hitting that lower sloping trend line, we've also still been capped at this top line here. It's fairly decent. I mean, this 93,400 is not a level that I'm just trying to do from this pennant. This goes all the way back into other time frames as well. Sorry, my phone's ringing. I'll just ignore it for now. And I suppose there's two ways of looking at this. Of course there is. We found our local bottom and we're just building our slope up and we're going to continue. And once we've hit it enough times, we're going to break through that and go to the top. But it'd be remiss of me not to say, well, actually, you could look at this completely different and be, let me just get rid of some of these. You could have a look at this, change the color so it looks a bit like what I want to draw, and say, well, we've been working within this rising channel in a falling market. And so actually the higher probability play when we get to the apex, which we're just entering now, is a move back down. And we can't ignore that. Of course we can't. It has been building up perfectly, and we can have as much hopium as we want. But to ignore a TA pattern like that, you do it at your detriment. So we've got to be prepared for that. And really, you know, the clues of where our alert should be if that's going to play out are actually being shown to us in terms of what these bottom baselines are. So you could probably take one, you know, if you have maybe a few too many if you hit one there and hit one there. But you can actually see if we do lose this channel to the downside, where these wicks from Thursday, they kind of tie in with the body closes from the weekend. You could say, right, well, 89,000, that's a level of interest to me. Because if we lose 89,000, not only have we broken to the downside of this, but we're now starting to take out local support levels as well. And then we're starting to say, actually, this looks like this is playing out. And there could be an opportunity for you to, get out, sidestep, whatever term you want to use to call it, before, trying to find an entry point. And the general consensus is, with these patterns, they kind of go back to the base. So you would be looking somewhere in and around 82,000. So, a fairly decent 10% move there, which is going to obviously hurt should that happen. But that being said, thinking about it more from a point of view of, we found the local bottom. Rest of the risk on assets are still doing well. And actually what we're seeing here is we're just, slowly snaking out of this. And this whilst it is resistance, it's getting weakened every time we hit it. And then what we will see is a move up there. And that's fine. I mean, we can have that conversation and sort of look at that being the route to take. There's no real length we can draw to say how far it's guaranteed to go from the TA, but it's certainly a direction that we could look to go towards. And just looking on the 12-hour time frame, completely clean, without any emails or anything else on there, you kind of got to say to yourself, why is it not drawing it? To this level in and around, I mean, I don't even want to do the bodies at 101 or kind of the wicks down here. But I'd say that 100K, let's draw it as a rectangle. Let's draw it as a rectangle, eh? This sort of area here would be an area of interest for it to get to in the end. So many connotations in and around that 100K psychological level, 50 EMA in the weekly time frame, EMAs, other support and resistance. So there's definitely some magnet towards it. Obviously could be a big barrier to get through, but what I would say is if you are following this pennant in any way, shape or form, then we're about at the apex. So, the decision should be made within, I've got rid of it again. I'll tell you. What's this? Middle of next week. We should be at the end of the played out by then. If we keep on moving out to the side but upwards, that's even better for us. We're just continuing that trend going on. One thing that I did point out last week that I haven't drawn on yet, but we'll see how this looks, was this sort of resistance line from the peak. Oh no, it's not trend line, it's a horizontal one. From the peak, and then as this was going down. I don't know if the daily's better, but that's why I found it. Probably is. Don't worry, I'll zoom in so everyone can see it a little bit better. So this is what we drew on Tuesday. Similar kind of story, and this has acted as resistance from this journey from 126,000 down. This has been, our sadly our Gandalf line, which we haven't been able to pass. And the fact that actually over the last 3 days we've come crashing into this and have not managed to get it through does suggest to me that this is still in play. Again, it's tying in with our apex, from the previous pattern we had drawn, which roughly looked like, I don't know, it's kind of like that, wasn't it? And I'll just draw it for a trend line, but this here. So we're kind of getting close to this trend line as well. And I wonder if there is a bit of a confluence that could maybe knock us on our ass. And we have to have a rethink about the direction we're going. We talked about people mentioning bear flags and those price targets. If that is true, a quite significant bear flag down to 70,000. But right now, this confluence here, it is our huge battleground for us, just on basic support and resistance. We've got this pennant formation, rising channel, which we are in the apex of. We've got this sloping resistance line all the way from 126, and it has hit perfectly, really. A couple of days we've managed to breach it, but only wicking, bodies closing at the same level. And that's at 93,000. I mean, okay, maybe we move up today, we get to 94,000, but we really are at it. And with a weekend ahead of us, they can go either way, unfortunately. We may find that this will have to play out. If it does, we've got to be prepared. They're the levels that we talk about. But the markets are going to move up. We are going to finally see risk on assets. So crypto mirror risk on assets and we want to see a break through this up, and then we can start talking about that 100k level and some of the other levels that it finds. I'm going to hit refresh again. It's going to give me the purple lines, but they were there because they showed, months worth of support and resistance lines. So 93, and then it's the 100, and just about 101. So that kind of makes sense. Okay, fine. I just want to remember what those levels were. Let's have a look. Just before we go into the main charting kind of things. So yeah, I will talk about this more on Tuesday. We had FOMC today, this week, 25 basis points. Fine, everyone kind of expected it. It's not a problem. I touched on this last week. I think the big thing is next Friday. Might be a non-event. We don't really have a tracker of where sentiment lies on terms of the Japanese interest rate, but obviously there is talks about putting that interest rate up, which could have a knock-on effect, of course, worldwide with carry-on trade and risk-on assets. So next Friday, I think, is a real big area to have a look at. We went through last week. The previous times that's happened, but once interest rates in Japan go up and people want to reduce their risk, we see that knock-on effect across all markets. So just something to bear in mind. The other thing is BlackRock are buying. They've been buying for the last couple of days. Not massive amounts, but they are buying. They have found some interest within that, and suddenly we're starting to see a bit more black on this screen rather than red in brackets. So there's no massive loss. There's no massive rush in either. There's no massive loss. But what I'm kind of find interesting at the moment is fear. We're kind of moving just into that fear. We're about to get to almost a normal kind of feeling, and that's not really through massive price rising. I think the shock of the fall and the fact that we spent 3 weeks stabilizing, it's just kind of got, we're very susceptible to sharp movements in the market as crypto traders, but we also can find adapt to the environment very quickly afterwards. And I think we just kind of got to that point where we're like, okay, we are at 90k now. This is where it is, and that needle's starting to move. I still always think buying in extreme fear is a solid play to have. And so for those of you that did buy anything during that period, next couple of weeks, hopefully that will be paying off for us. May not go all the way up to extreme greed, but we may find an opportunity to exit at a higher position. So something there. And again, we'll just keep monitoring sentiment. Right, if we have a look at Bitcoin with a few other things on the charts before we wrap it up. So yeah, we talked about that wedge. I'm not going to do it, but what I would say, now that we've got some EMAs, we've managed to stay. We're still above the 10 and the 20. We haven't actually made that big a movement over the last couple of days. The wicks have been big, but the bodies have been relatively tight, and that has managed to just keep us above the 20 EMA. And even yesterday when we did drop sub 90, it was brought up pretty darn quickly, to be honest, which for me is a positive sign, at least in the short term, that people are wanting to make that move. And I still look, notwithstanding those resistant lines that I actually drew, but now just solely focusing on the EMAs. For me, the path of sort of least resistance, or my most logical route, which obviously will now be negated, would be that journey back towards that 50 EMA, back towards that cluster of vectors in and around 97,000. If we can get to the top end of that vector zone, guess what we're running into? It's the 100K, it's the 50 weekly EMA, it's the other major support lines that we talked about. So there's definitely sort of that room to the upside. And I still think that is the more logical play. What I can't rule out is if the apex breaks, where do I see us moving towards? Well, there's two levels. There's reclaiming that. So anywhere from 88 to 86,000. And then unfortunately, there's another retest down here, which takes us to the base of this drop, the base of that pennant that we're talking about, and what would be the 800 EMA in around 82,000. So obviously there are some levels we need to consider for the downside. But what we haven't really seen is that much increased volume, at least on the daily time frame, to get us through. So I don't know if we'll see it over the weekend, but we want to see a nice strong candle up there. Okay, we want to have this area of milling about, if you will, replicated after a swift journey up to the 50 EMA, consolidate there. Then we can start talking about building into the six figures, 100K and beyond. Certainly not unfeasible. And I don't dismind, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. I don't mind the picture that I'm seeing with Bitcoin at the moment, notwithstanding that bear pennant, whatever you want to call it. I still think this is a fairly good structure to be in after such a sharp drop, seeing these higher highs and higher lows forming. I got no problem with that. We haven't actually formed a higher high on this move at the moment, so we kind of need to see that happen. At the moment, that would sit a close above 93,500. And then I think we would probably say that we have exited the downtrend. That would have been the 5th or 6th iteration since the bottom, 21st of November. Down on some lower time frames. Let's just get rid of all the drawings. It's going to be messy the way they're saved. I mean, this kind of shows this week we have really just moved sideways since the beginning of December. It has been, well, 1st of December, okay, it was a bit of a disaster day, I accept. But, you know, since the 2nd, you know, all we've done is we reclaimed 90K, been up to 94, down to 90K, back to 94, down to 90K. The 200 EMA is actually interacting with us, but we're kind of just gravitating in and around that 50 EMA as kind of the mean area. Right now, we're above it. We had that conversation this time last week, and over the weekend we fell below it, but they have been recovered. We're leaving vectors in our wake, which we know we like to recover. And so once we can get out of this range, and I think the range is more clearly defined, you know, this ceiling, looking at it on the 4-hour, it really is kind of sitting 93,700, which is tying in with the 200 EMA at the moment. You know what I'm going to want then? I want to see markets open in 10 minutes, green vector candle flying through this. It is, yeah, it's a Friday today. The markets will be open, unless it's a bank holiday in America. Not sure if it is or not. But yeah, that's the battleground then. 93,700, so just over $1,400 from where we currently sit at the moment. But we've got some wiggle room to the downside, and you know, again looking at some of these levels, okay, maybe we get down to 90,000 again, but we were bought up pretty well. It certainly recovered itself when we did drop back down there, and we've seen that over the past 2 weeks. Drops down below, are bought back up. Or I should say, people are buying as it's coming down and then selling into the valleys, but it's another story for another day. Okay, let's leave Bitcoin there. Let's go on to BitTensor. So daily time frame, we're not quite as progressed as we were on Bitcoin in terms of, yes, okay, we're starting to build above the 10 EMA. We're ever so slightly. We've been above the 20 EMA, but we've not been able to sustain price action above it. So there's a battle to be had there. And you can actually see a couple of days ago, we did move up, got to 315, rejected back down. The next day we got to about 313, rejected, come back down. We did fall yesterday all the way down to 280, and it has been bought back up at the moment. But we're just kind of waiting. It is a waiting game. We've got the Gandalf line at 315, which you wait any longer, and the 50 EMA is going to be pretty much with the 200 EMA, 800 EMA on that Gandalf line. That's going to be a hell of a battle for us to get through. But if I wanted to draw, I should have done it when we were on a clean chart. Let's just take a clean chart here. You know, if I'm trying to look at sort of levels of support and resistance just on a clean chart without the EMA, sorry, I should have done this. It's difficult because that one worked well in the past. And then recently, we've kind of straddled it either side. Maybe you could do a bit of an angle on it, but if we're going to keep that as a main it's on the 12-hour, that's why. Okay, that might help clean it up a little bit. There, yeah, okay, that's better. We are above this level of support here, and then, you know, if we try and mirror what Bitcoin did from its high to its low, and sort of say we've reached that some time ago, to be fair, and we've just been moving sideways from it. Yes, I accept that double bottom is not quite as nice, and we've talked about that on Tuesday. But trying to be optimistic here, you know, that 291 is an area that I would, you know, as long as we can hold that, I think we've got some opportunity. And I think if we actually go down onto the 4-hour, you can see at 291, it ties in with the 10 EMA here. I think it pretty much ties in with the 50 EMA on the 4-hour as well. So certainly something to have a look at there. But again, you know, this is feeling, you know, a couple of weeks ago, what's happening here? Like a week ago, rejected from 200 EMA. We're just going to head back down. But it actually feels a bit more like a rounded bottom now. Maybe we are just fine a slow burn into it. Maybe the thought of the halving happening Sunday, Monday, whenever it is just hampering, volume, hampering trade. I mean, we haven't had a green vector candle since the beginning of November. We've only had 2 red vector candles in the last 6 weeks. That's it. So it's definitely a reduced amount of volume to try and sort of give us any vector areas to target. And yes, okay, we like to recover vectors, but I think thinking about price getting to 480s are probably a little out of the realm of possibility until at least Tuesday. I'd love it if we got there, but I'm not sure we're going to get there over the next couple of days. We'd need a hell of a move, a bit like what happened in October, I suppose. Let's get rid of both of those, and then let's drop down 4 hour. So I'd say that 50 EMA, yeah, it's at 292 now, but that support level at 291, kind of where I'm looking. And I accept we have broken it. We're the right side of it at the moment. We've just got to keep holding it, and maybe this is just going to be very determined on what Bitcoin's doing. That sort of choppy action as we pennant up. Fair enough. We can definitely draw a base support. So any of you that are out and are looking to get back in, you might want to be looking along this line and just say, you know what, we get back down to here, 290, let's say. I'm going to start to look to fill a position for a move back up. The issue being is a 200 EMA, because this pretty much the Gandalf line, 315, kissed it, coming down, came back up, rejected from it hard with vectors, each time. This one didn't obviously quite get there. I think it ties in on the hourly though, the 800 EMA. Again, a strong vector rejection. Oh, that was into it, but rejection into it. And these previous vectors though have all pretty much been recovered. The only vector that's sort of within this range is the one down at 264. And I did say, if we get a shock result on yesterday, Wednesday even, and the market's dumped, 260 level is where I'd be looking just to recover that. As that didn't happen and markets are just moving sideways, I'm only really considering that 260 if we do lose the 290 level. But right now, this lower trend line is actually working out quite well, which is why I really am struggling to understand where I'm sitting at the moment, in, out. I need to kind of make that decision before I lose it too high. Part of me, the other side of it, is just thinking, until we break that bit, 313 now, what am I doing? I'm just messing around, $10, $20 either side. But I suppose there are gains to be had from doing that. In terms of, see on the lower time frames, how much you in or out? So I'm pretty much now, I think it's 80% out of the Tau, 20% in. So once I'm fully in or fully out, I will let you know. I've been messing around since FOMC, just trying to decide what it is to do. Obviously, I got out originally at like 310, did some buying back of it just ahead of FOMC at like 297, and then yesterday I've kind of just been messing about with just selling it when it got back into profit, and I've just kept a little bit of it. I don't know why, but that's the honest answer. But unfortunately, been dealing with some other things that probably not the best, including I will confess to some pretty poor perp trading with Zcash. So it's kind of been taking over a bit of my time, and I was just mentioning to someone yesterday that I'm going to have to take a break over the weekend just to rethink the strategy I'm using, because whilst I'm now playing with a considerable amount of profit, the size of the positions I'm having when I'm losing them, they're all relative, but it's enough to just think, what am I doing? I'm just messing around here, and I kind of feel like I'm probably chasing it, and it's fine to do that. The wins are the good, obviously, but the losses are all part of the game, and I'm already feeling, not that I burn out, just that I need to have a break and just reset myself, because I'm just getting ill-disciplined, which is what I tell you lot to be, and I need to follow that myself. So yesterday was, me just trying to sort of sort all that out at the same time. Anyway, down on the 1 hour with BitTensor, and again, strong move up from here. Vectors have been recovered generally. we're in a nice position with the exception of the 800 EMA, which you can kind of see sort of mirroring the 200 EMA on the 4 hour. Yeah, we're in a nice position. Okay, market's just open, but as long as we stay above the 50 EMA 296, then I don't mind that. A little move down, maybe we move slightly through it, but as long as we can strongly move out from it again, start to have a look. But my real battleground is this 312 now, 313 before. I can't get too excited with BitTensor's price action until we've done that. And as I say, maybe there's some fundamentals behind it all with the halving, not really understanding what's going to happen. It is the first for BitTensor after all. Just trying to see how that's going to impact the wider ecosystem. I don't know. But until we get above that, I'm not really getting too excited. Once we do get above it, and I'll probably have to go back onto the 4 hour, I think there's some interesting levels that we can have that conversation with. I mean, first, even up to 346, the 200 EMA, 800 EMA, sorry, in the 4 hour, be a good level. And it's not, there's actually a fairly logical, you just do, I appreciate that I've had to, shrink the candles. Tell you what, let's just, that's annoying, sorry. We just do it like this. You can kind of see there's definitely some history in and around this level, which suggests where that 800 EMA is, it's not a bad level. We get above 313, people to start thinking, right, well, that might be the next major line of resistance for us to consider. So I'd certainly be looking over there in that side of things. Let's just put that back onto those. Let's just load these back up. Oh, I think I just heard my kids come bursting through the door. What else can we see from there? Not too much. Let's have a look at some of the others. Zcash, to be fair to it, from a, just we had that pull down into the sector. The pullback was, to be expected, I suppose. I wonder actually, top to bottom, what was the pullback? Okay, nothing really tied in there. Fair enough. But anyway, we were expecting some sort of pullback from there. I was just trying to say there's no bib. We didn't recover that full vector. I was trying to see what turned us around. But anyway, but now, daily time frame, we've actually managed to find that bottom, climb above the 10, the 20, and the 50. And this is where I've been messing about. Can't really, these last 3 or 4 days, just within these 3 zones, when you're trading with leverage on much, smaller time frame, 15-minute time frames, it's been a bit of a messy period for me. But actually, when you zoom out, this has bucked the market anyway. So you can't just say just because Bitcoin's going down, this thing isn't, because this has done the opposite of Bitcoin for months. But this looks pretty good. We're about to get back into the noise where we peaked. We've had that retracement down. We've had a fairly strong move back out from it. You could argue we've already retested the 50 EMA. Maybe we test it again, but the 50, the 10, and the 20 pretty much sitting on top of each other at about 420. Fairly good level, and that's sort of where I'm trying to make that move. So I'll monitor that and have a look to make a play from it. In terms of the likes of Ethereum, so we've had that double bottom. It's made that strong move up, but just have a look at what's happened. Ethereum has outperformed Bitcoin this week. It's done quite well. Up to the 50 EMA, wicked into the 200, rejected from it. It's not a full rejection because we're still within the cloud, but 2, we just reject down to the 10 EMA. We're now just having a bit of a battleground area. We may see some chop, we may see some volatility, but ultimately, we knew we were going to have that battle. Yes, we were rejected, but we haven't really lost anything major from it. And even this 800 EMA daily time frame has been helping sort of just move us up. But the one other thing to consider, I think this is going to look better on this chart, is, let me just hide these again. Sorry, hiding everything. Should just have separate charts for it. We did it with Bitcoin, we've done it with BitTensor. But you draw this trend line here, same one that Bitcoin's been going through. And actually, we've broken through it. Because Ethereum's done better than Bitcoin this week, it has actually broken through that trend line that we've had since the high of Bitcoin beginning of October, that 126,000 wasn't the high of Ethereum, but it was a local high. It has been rejecting from it, much like Bitcoin has done, but we've managed to get through it. So could be just foretelling what we should see, hopefully see with BitTensor, Bitcoin. in the next few days. But yeah, Ethereum, to give it its dues, it has managed to get through that level. Price action in terms of getting up to the 50 EMA and being rejected from the 200. Not surprising, but the fact that it didn't fall that far, can kind of give you some sort of reassurance that actually this could be recoverable. So, and for those alt holders, this is a nice little precursor then. If Ethereum's going to go on its run, for us to see some healthy recorrections to our portfolios. And then levels, I mean, obviously we've got to get through 3,300 and 3,400. So on the hundreds, that makes it nice and easy. And then pretty much 3.7 to 3.9 would be recovering that vector candle, building into this noise. And it's not just noise from here. We've also got this noise from there. So that kind of level is a logical level for us to sort of journey into, make a bit of noise, and then whatever needs to happen happens. Hopefully up, not down, obviously. In terms of some of the other ones, Solana just kind of moving sideways. So not how it's similar-ish to the pattern on Bitcoin and some of the altcoins, but whilst Bitcoin, has portrayed this kind of pattern, so at least seeing some uptick, Solana's is, pretty much just moving out to the side. Doesn't mean that we're not forming bottoms, but as well, could easily just continue to the downside. We've got the 200, we've got the 50, we've got quite a bit of noise ahead of us. But much like Bitcoin, we have broken at least from that dominance to the 10 EMA, and we're now above that. We won't say victory on the 20 EMA just yet because it's today that we're above it. But that's something that we can certainly have a look towards. For those that are interested in XRP, this one's moving down. This is different. So obviously it had its peak much higher, but this is just continuing to move down, still being dominated by the 10 and 20 EMA. And for that reason, even if you don't want to go all the way down to the 800 EMA at 175, I'd certainly be looking at just continuing that journey down to 182 and sort of retesting that low before potentially finding some sort of bottom. And it's why altcoins are interesting, because they can have their own journey. Generally, most follow in the right direction, but some just find their own journey. It just feels to me like XRP hasn't broken its trend yet. It's continuing down. So the more logical would be for it to continue down in that direction. Dominance. I mean, yeah, okay, we're battling the 50 EMA. We're just moving sideways now. And that range is just, we're just in so much of it. Well, okay, there is an interesting point, I suppose. This one here and this one here, the 200 and the 800 EMA, we're kind of equidistant between them both. We break the 200 EMA, Bitcoin's ripping. We lose, so that's 60%. We lose 58%, so get down to that 57 and 3/4, and then it's alt season again. So yeah, we just, until we've done either of those two moves, I think Bitcoin dominance is just, some days we might see alts do all right, and other days Bitcoin's going to carry on. And that has no reflection in terms of price, just in terms of sort of where the market's going. ETH BTC, you can see over the last week that move that Ethereum BTC has had. Retest coming back down, that continues. There could be a decent move there to be had. In terms of things like, I haven't really looked at this, but okay, Tether dominance is coming down. Maybe vectors, that's when we're going to feel the market's moving back up. I don't really look at this, but yeah, USDT is climbing. We've done totals. The VIX is fairly low, so might see some volatility ahead. Dixie rejected off that 100, coming back down. Remember, this line here is, from the weekly point of view, dates all the way back to 2008. So sort of 97.2 would be an area to watch. Break that, could be interesting. NASDAQ making its move, continuing back up. S&P's not quite at all-time high. Oh, did it tip an all-time high? I think it technically closed at an all-time high. I don't know if it wicked into it. Yes, I'm sure I would have read if it wicked into it. I tell you what, we're going to have to zoom really far in. We could all do this on our own time. I think it might have done, I didn't read about that, but okay. S&P hit an all-time high yesterday. Well done to it. It's pulling back today, mind. The Russell, so that is moving. You know, and people talk. Well, Bijan talks about the Russell and alt seasons being, you know, kind of correlated. We have disconnected just generally from the traditional market, but if we can get back on track and the Russell's doing well, maybe that's just within the realms for alt season to do it. Gold is ripping and still looking. This will take its all-time high. Probably even take it today. To be honest, it's not far off where it needs to go, and it's just looking very strong. Silver obviously is looking much better. $64. I might have to stop looking at silver. It's just hurting too much. Most of the other ones we look at are doing fairly well. Circle's starting to climb back up. I'd say 100 is going to be its battleground there. MicroStrategy, a lot of work to do for me for MicroStrategy there. We're just forming some sort of base. I'm not going to dig into correlations between MicroStrategy peaking and others, but for those of you who are holding it or looking to buy it, I'd just wait. You know, I know wait till break of the 50 EMA is $40, $60 away, but still, if you're dead set on having it, I'd wait just to see what it is. I don't own any. I'm not bought into that. Nvidia's, you know, just ranging after its all-time high. Some of the other ones. Okay, fine. I put T-Wave down here. Tau Weave. That is Oblong. For those of you who aren't aware, that's what it was rebranded to. So that's what the ticker looks like now because it was only done a few days ago. But yeah, that is just to bear in mind. I don't think it was mentioned yesterday on the pub, but that's it. So for those of you who are interested, T-Wave is what you're looking for. And I think that's probably it. I don't really know in terms of how I'm ultimately feeling in the market. But, you know, basically just to reiterate what I did on Tuesday, we are below the 50 EMA on the weekly time frame, so I am hesitant. And until we can break back above that, and we'll have a look what level that it currently sits at. Let's just get onto a clean chart. Weekly EMAs. Get rid of the drawings. That's a daily. 99. So until we can actually get above that, I am going to be hesitant. I'm going to be skeptical of pumps, although I want them and I can kind of see where they're happening. Till we now get above the other side of that, I'm just watching. As I said, you know, I will let everyone know where I sit with the Tau kind of thing. I probably feel like the risk of me missing out is probably greater than the risk of it moving back down, particularly with how fast I can shed that. So I probably will just get back in. Maybe wait to drop down into the 290s again. But yeah, I'm just hesitant. I think that's it, you know, and I think being cautious at this stage does not damage me in any way, shape, or form in terms of, you know, still majority in the market Bitcoin. So, you know, any moves to the upside I can benefit from. Probably within the next 24 hours, I'll be back in with the Tau side of things as well. But I'm just, you know, conscious that if we start to see failed rallies, I'm going to be start having that change of attitude. So until we get above 99,000, that's always kind of going to be my stance. I know that goes against what some other people are saying, and that's absolutely fine. We're playing a different game here. But yeah, I think that's it. Bored you for 45 minutes. I've had quite a few DMs over the last few days. I'm working through those, so I'm not ignoring you. If anyone does have any questions about anything, and trust me, the pattern of the DMs have not just been about crypto and trading. A lot of them obviously been about what's been going on in the group this week. Just feel free to reach out. More than happy to speak to anybody on an individual matter, whether it's over a call or just, you know, texting and chatting through the chat features. No problem whatsoever. If you have any concerns with anything, again, feel free to let me know. And if some of them people, you know, wanting to make sure that I'll keep things confidential, of course I will. So just reiterate that I'm not out here to just go and pass stuff on. If you don't want me to talk about it, etc., that's absolutely fine. Have a great weekend, everybody. I would be really interested if people can just keep me up to date with how the halving goes for BitTensor. I don't know if it's Sunday or Monday, but if it's over the weekend, just someone let me know what date actually happens and sort of how that what the implications of it are. I'd be really keen to have a look there. I will speak to you all soon. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Cheers now.